The first principle is that you want to follow your curiosity. What that means is that when you're listening to music and when you are exploring different tutorials and videos teaching you the piano or new skills, you really want to follow the things that spark your interest, you know? As a practical example, the other day I was scrolling through Instagram and I found this really great piano tutorial which was basically teaching these things called tritone substitutions, and I learned this guy played this really interesting chord which goes like this, right? It's this really spicy sounding chord. I was like, whoa, that's so cool. And so the first thing I did was I just started playing around with that on the piano and exploring that in my own way, okay? So that's the first thing. You want to learn the things that you're curious about when you're curious about them, and you know what you're curious about. These moments when you're like, whoa, that's cool, what was that? Or like, whoa, I love the sound of that. You want to really capitalize on that because that's your own unique taste, calling to you and saying, hey, I like this. So you have to go and you learn that, and over the years you're going to acquire all of this language that's uniquely yours, right? Based on what you love. Now, I'll show you. The next thing that I did was I started playing around with it and I composed a little idea on the piano using that new language that I had acquired, right? And this is what I came up with. Right, this cool little chord progression thing, and I'm using this new chord that I found, right? This lovely chord, this lovely sound that I found from that guy's video, and that I found from playing around with it. And when you take something that you've learned and you apply it in some kind of creative way, right? You use it to compose your own idea, like I've done with this. What that does is it ingrains itself inside your muscle memory, inside your mind, inside your ears. You learn it a lot quicker, right? Because you're internalizing those new things that you pick up. And that's really important. That's how you start to really, take these things you're curious about, and that's how it actually starts to integrate into your playing. And as you continue to practice, you're going to start using these things in practical ways when you're performing and composing and producing, right? So that's kind of like a two-step process. You're curious about something, you play around with it on the piano, right? I guess this is a three-step process. Step 3 is you use that new language or that new thing that you've learned in a creative way, right? Compose with it, produce with it, or perform with it, okay? So that's a kind of a principle when it comes to actually, developing your own sound and style on the piano is, follow your curiosity. But that's not so practical. So the second point that I wanted to show you is way more practical, okay? Now, it is to explore a DAW. Okay, now this is really only accessible to you if you have a keyboard that you can plug into your computer. A DAW is essentially a software on your computer, if you don't know what it is, that allows you to explore heaps of different sounds. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to explore your tone on the piano. Okay, so this tone that you're hearing now, right? This is the tone that I love, and you will hear this tone, this piano sound, in basically all of my videos, right? But what a DAW allows you to do is it allows you to actually manipulate the tone. So for example, I can add a lot of reverb to this, and maybe I would resonate with this tone instead, right? I'm not a big fan of that. That's a lot of reverb, but maybe that's what you like. And what a DAW allows you to do is it allows you to explore these different sounds with the piano. Maybe you actually discover that, whoa, you're more of a fan of this kind of Rhodes sound, right? So it's all about kind of exploring the potential of the keyboard and these different keyboard sounds and tones that you can play around with. As a practical example, I've actually been playing around with this kind of very spacey, deep piano tone that sounds like this. Right? It's just this lovely, rich, deep sound, and I've been using that to compose these kind of improvised piano meditations. That's a bit of a contradiction. Compose these improvised piano meditations. Basically, I've been sitting there for like 10 to 15 minutes a day and just improvising using this tone. And so this is a new part of my sound and my style, you know? And when I'm uploading music on YouTube, that's what people hear, right? So tone is a really important part of music and a part of playing music and performing and producing and composing, and the ways that you create with the keyboard. The tone is literally what people hear, right? So when people listen to one of my new piano meditation pieces, this is basically the sound that they hear, you know? And so that's part of my sound and my style. And so you can actually play around with this so much. I mean, there's unlimited potential in terms of the ways that you can play around with sounds and tones, and you can combine different things. So maybe if you wanted to create a kind of meditative piano sound, you could maybe create a synth pad on top of that for this really rich, deep, broad sound, you know? And essentially, you want to explore all of these different parameters like reverb and like, you can add different effects like a delay effect or a phaser or a tremolo, right? And the DAW allows you to do that. This is not a tutorial on DAW. I'm essentially just giving you some ideas for how you can find your sound and style. But that's a really practical way of actually exploring and discovering a sound and a tone that really resonates with you. And if you don't have a DAW and you just have a keyboard, you can do this on a keyboard, you know? Explore the keyboard, search for those sounds that really speak to you, you know? And again, that's going back to that curiosity point. You want to follow your curiosity. So that's essentially how you can go about finding your sound and style on the piano. Yeah, hopefully this was helpful. I have like a full guide and tutorial on UtK Keyboard Pro for getting started with the DAW and, you know, starting to use it to actually compose and produce your own music. So if you're interested in that, check out UtK Keyboard Pro. And if you want to accelerate your progress and actually really finding your voice on the piano, there's a link for one-on-one coaching as well, and you can book a call to find out about that. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck finding your sound and your style, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.